Ever feel like you're kind of running behind in life? You know?
Yeah.
Like everyone else is hitting milestones, making progress, and you're just stuck playing catch up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're going to deep dive into this lecture. It's called Getting Your Life Together When It Feels Like You're Too Far Behind to Catch Up.
Huh.
It's packed with insights, so we're going to try and pull out the most valuable nuggets for you.
It's interesting, right? This whole feeling of being behind thing.
Oh, for sure.
It's a lecture. It really digs into like the psychology of it all.
Yeah.
And it starts with these three things that really kind of feed that feeling.
Okay.
And I got to admit, I see myself in some of these.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all do.
Yeah.
The first one, the comparison trap. That's a big one.
Huge.
Especially with social media these days.
It's like everyone's just like always presenting these like perfect lives, right?
Yeah.
Vacations and promotions and picture-perfect families and all that.
Yeah.
But, the lecture reminds us that this is just a highlight reel.
We're comparing our like everyday, just like normal life to everyone else's like carefully crafted online persona.
Yeah.
It's just not a fair comparison.
Right.
But it's so easy to just fall into that.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's not even just social media, right? It's like, you have that friend who landed their dream job right out of college.
Yeah.
Or, a relative who just like effortlessly glides through all of life's milestones.
Oh, I know, right? And it can just really make you question your own path, even if like objectively you're doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads to that second thing,
Okay.
this like tyranny of milestones.
Oh, yeah.
The lecture points out how like these supposed to ages for like major life events,
Right.
like graduating, getting married, having kids, all that. It just creates this invisible pressure cooker.
It totally does. It's like as soon as you hit a certain age, boom. Everyone's asking, when are you getting married? When are you having kids?
Oh, I know.
When are you buying a house?
I know.
Like there's some kind of universal timetable that we all got to stick to.
Right. And it's so funny because a lot of these milestones are actually pretty arbitrary.
Yeah.
And culturally driven, like they change over time and across different cultures.
That's true.
Like think about it, like 100 years ago, like getting married at 18 wasn't unusual.
Right.
Like at all.
Yeah.
But now in a lot of Western cultures, that would be considered pretty young.
Yeah.
So the lecture like really challenges us to question these assumptions and like create our own definitions of success and fulfillment.
You know what I love about that?
What?
Is that it's like taking back control of your own narrative.
Yes.
Like instead of feeling pressured by those external expectations,
Yeah.
you get to define what really matters to you.
Yes.
Which brings us to that third factor, right? The weight of our past mistakes.
Oh, man.
That feeling of like, if only I had done this differently.
Oof. We all have those, don't we?
We all have them. Yeah, those what ifs and should haves.
Mm-hmm.
But the lecture has a really helpful way to reframe that, right?
It does.
Like instead of viewing them as like failures that define us,
Mm-hmm.
it encourages us to see them as learning experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is such a crucial distinction, I think.
Huge.
Yeah. It's easy to get stuck in that cycle of self-blame and regret.
Oh, yeah.
But shifting to like a learning mindset, it lets you actually extract valuable lessons from those experiences.
Exactly. And the lecture emphasizes that. Like these past decisions don't have to like dictate all your future possibilities.
Right.
You can always learn, grow, and change course.
So we've got these three big players contributing to that feeling of being behind.
Mm-hmm.
The comparison trap, the tyranny of milestones, and the weight of past mistakes.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The lecture argues that feeling behind doesn't necessarily mean you are behind.
Yeah.
So how can that be?
Well, it kind of highlights this fact that, progress isn't linear.
Right.
We tend to imagine success as this like straight upward trajectory.
Right.
But in reality, it's usually a lot messier. Unpredictable, full of detours,
I can definitely relate to that. I think about like my own career path.
Yeah.
It's been anything but a straight line. There's
Yeah.
been like unexpected turns, setbacks, moments where I felt completely lost.
Oh, yeah.
But looking back, all those experiences, they kind of shaped me and ultimately led me to where I am today.
Exactly. And the lecture uses some really great examples to like illustrate this point.
Okay.
Like Julia Child,
Oh, yeah.
the legendary chef. She didn't publish her first cookbook until she was in her 50s.
Wow.
Or Colonel Sanders
Okay, yeah.
didn't find success with KFC until he was in his 60s.
That's incredible.
I know. These are people who achieved amazing things, but like their journeys were anything but conventional.
It's like that saying, right? Overnight success takes 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
We often only see the end result, not the years of hard work, setbacks, and seemingly unproductive time that went into it.
Yeah, and that's like such a key takeaway. It's about shifting our perspective, from like focusing on where we should be to like appreciating the unique path we're actually on.
I love that. It's about trusting the process, even when it feels messy or uncertain.
Yeah. And it's about recognizing that sometimes those like detours, those unexpected turns,
Yeah.
they can lead to something even better than what we originally pictured.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've established that, progress isn't linear.
Right.
Feeling behind doesn't mean you're doomed to stay there.
Right.
But the lecture also talks about reinvention.
Yes.
So is it ever too late to change course?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think the lecture's answer is a resounding no.
Okay.
Yeah. It emphasizes that you can always learn new things, change careers, reshape relationships, even reinvent your whole identity if you want.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a real sense of hope and possibility, woven throughout this whole thing.
I find that incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It reminds me that we're not bound by our past choices or our circumstances.
Right.
We have the agency to create the future that we want.
Yes. And that ties into this idea of lifelong learning,
Yeah.
which the lecture really champions.
Oh, interesting.
It's not just about formal education, but about cultivating this mindset of curiosity and exploration and adaptability.
That resonates with me a lot. I think in today's world, things are changing so quickly,
Right.
The ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is more valuable than ever.
Totally.
It's about embracing change and seeing it as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat.
And it's about recognizing that personal growth isn't a destination, it's a continuous journey.
Yeah.
We're always evolving, learning, and becoming.
So we debunked that whole myth of being behind. We explored the power of reinvention and lifelong learning.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about this idea of catching up.
Yeah.
Is that even a helpful concept?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think the lecture would argue that maybe catching up isn't quite the right way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about reaching some arbitrary finish line
Yeah.
and more about embracing this process of continuous growth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about, focusing on our own individual journeys and celebrating the progress we make along the way rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others.
Exactly. It's about finding that fulfillment in the journey itself, not just the destination. And the lecture gives some really helpful tools and strategies to help us kind of shift our mindset and, embrace this more empowering approach.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the next part of our deep dive. We're going to dig into the mindset shifts that this lecture recommends for moving forward in a more positive and productive way.
I'm excited for that.
Me too. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
So, before the break, we were talking about unpacking those mindset shifts from the lecture.
Yeah.
And these are so important, because how we think about, our situation can really either hold us back or propel us forward.
Totally. So what's that first shift the lecture suggests?
It all starts with reframing our narrative.
Okay.
Instead of dwelling on how far we got to go or how much we haven't done.
Yeah.
It encourages us to focus on the progress we are making, no matter how small.
That's interesting because it really flips the script on that I'm so behind mentality.
Right. It does. It's about, shifting to a more positive
Yeah.
and empowering internal dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of I'm so behind, it's I'm making progress every day.
Yeah.
Instead of I should be further along, it's I'm proud of how far I've come.
That makes me think about gratitude journaling.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just taking a few minutes each day to write down things you're grateful for. It can have a huge impact on your mindset, right?
It really can.
It helps you focus on the positive, even when things, feel tough.
And that actually ties into the next mindset shift the lecture talks about.
Okay.
Self-compassion over self-criticism.
Ooh, that's a big one. I think a lot of us struggle with that, being way too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, me too. It's so common, especially when, we're feeling behind. But the lecture, it reminds us that we're often our own worst critics.
Oh, 100%.
You know, like we would never like talk to our friends the way we sometimes talk to ourselves.
Oh, that's so true.
We'd never be like, you're such a failure for not achieving X by now.
Right.
Or, you're so lazy, you'll never get anywhere. But those are the kind of thoughts that we often like have in our own heads.
Right.
So, you know, the lecture challenges us to cultivate self-compassion, to treat ourselves with that same, you know, kindness and understanding and patience that we would offer to someone we love.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just my inner critic talking.
Sure.
But doesn't some level of self-criticism, like, push us to do better?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the key is to, like, distinguish between healthy self-reflection and destructive self-criticism.
Okay.
Right? Like healthy self-reflection involves, you know, honestly assessing our strengths and weaknesses, learning from our mistakes, and, you know, striving to improve. Destructive self-criticism, though, that involves like harsh judgments and negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And this focus on, you know, perceived flaws and all that. It's demotivating and ultimately like counterproductive.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that balance between holding ourselves accountable and, you know, also being kind to ourselves.
Exactly. And the lecture emphasizes that everyone moves at their own pace. You know, there's no need to compare our journey to anybody else's. We're all in our own like unique timeline.
I love that. It takes the pressure off trying to like keep up with everyone else.
Right.
And just lets us focus on our own growth and development.
Absolutely. And speaking of pressure, you know, the lecture also talks about perfectionism.
Oh, yes.
Which can be a big roadblock on the path to progress.
Perfectionism, that's a topic near and dear to my heart.
Right.
I'm a recovering perfectionist myself.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, it's a tough habit to break.
I bet. You know, the lecture kind of reminds us that perfectionism, it often disguises itself as a virtue.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's a form of procrastination and self-sabotage. It keeps us, you know, stuck in this cycle of analysis paralysis, preventing us from actually, you know, taking action and making progress.
It's so true. I can't tell you how many times I've put off starting something.
Yeah.
Because I was waiting for the perfect time or the perfect conditions.
Yeah.
Guess what? That perfect time never comes.
It never does.
Yeah.
So, you know, the lecture encourages us to embrace that mantra of like, done is better than perfect.
Okay.
You know, it's about shifting our focus from, you know, striving for flawlessness to just taking action, even if it feels like messy or imperfect.
You know, I think that's such a powerful reframe.
It is.
You know, it's about prioritizing progress over perfection.
Exactly.
And I think it ties back into that previous point about self-compassion, right?
Yeah.
Being kind to ourselves also means accepting that we're not going to get everything right all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to stumble.
Of course.
And that's okay.
Totally normal.
It's all part of the learning process.
Beautifully said. And that kind of leads perfectly into the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Which is all about actionable steps we can take to, you know, actually start moving forward.
Right.
Even when we're feeling behind.
Yes. Let's get practical. What does the lecture recommend?
It starts with a very, like, simple but profound piece of advice.
Okay.
Start where you are.
Okay.
Right. It acknowledges that it's easy to feel overwhelmed when we look at like the big picture, you know, all the things we want to achieve and all that.
Right.
But the key is to like focus on the present moment.
Okay.
And ask ourselves like, what's one small step I can take right now?
Yeah.
With like the resources and abilities I have right now.
I love that. It's about breaking down those overwhelming goals into manageable steps, right?
Yes.
Focusing on what we can control
rather
than getting bogged down by what we can't.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the most effective ways to do that is through setting SMART goals.
Oh, SMART goals. Okay.
Yeah. The lecture like breaks down this acronym, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit further for our listeners.
Okay.
What does each of those elements actually mean, you know, in practice?
So a specific goal is like clearly defined, leaving no room for ambiguity. So like instead of saying, I want to be healthier,
right,
a specific goal would be like, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to run a 5K.
Okay.
Measurable means you can like track your progress towards that goal.
Gotcha.
Achievable means the goal is like realistic.
Right.
Given, you know, your current resources and abilities. Relevant means the goal aligns with, your values and overall life goals.
Okay.
And time-bound means you've set like a deadline for achieving it.
Okay.
Which helps to create a sense of urgency and accountability.
I think that's so helpful because I think a lot of times we set ourselves up for failure by setting these like vague or unrealistic goals.
Yeah, totally.
But by, breaking them down into these SMART goals, we can make them way more achievable and actionable.
Exactly. And then the lecture goes on to emphasize the power of routines.
Oh, yeah. I love routines.
It suggests like creating daily routines that, support your goals. Whether that's like a morning routine to, boost your productivity,
right,
or a nighttime routine to like wind down and make sure you get good sleep.
Routines are such a game changer.
They really are.
I've noticed a huge difference in my life since I started implementing like consistent morning and evening routines.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like it creates structure, it reduces decision fatigue, and it helps you build that momentum towards your goals.
Absolutely. And speaking of building momentum, the lecture also encourages, continuing to learn and grow.
Okay.
It reminds us that learning keeps our minds sharp, expands our horizons, and helps us adapt to this, ever-changing world.
Right. I am all about lifelong learning. And it doesn't even have to be like formal education.
Oh, totally.
It could be, reading books, listening to podcasts, taking some online courses, or just like engaging in those new experiences that challenge you to learn and grow.
Exactly. And the lecture also touches on the importance of focusing on what we can control, which is so crucial, especially when we're feeling behind and kind of overwhelmed.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others, dwelling on those past mistakes, or worrying about things that are, totally outside of our control.
Yeah. I struggle with that sometimes. My brain just naturally goes towards worry and anxiety.
Yeah, I feel that.
But I know that focusing on what I can control is way more empowering and productive.
It is. And the lecture reminds us that, we can control our effort, our attitude, our choices, and our responses to challenges.
Right.
We can't control everything that happens to us.
Right.
But we can control how we choose to respond.
That's such a powerful reminder,
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of our lives and focusing our energy on things that we can actually influence.
Totally.
And I think that leads perfectly into that final actionable step that the lecture discusses, which is, seeking support.
Yes. The lecture emphasizes, surrounding ourselves with supportive people, mentors, friends, family, communities, people who uplift and encourage us,
Having a strong support system is so crucial for staying motivated.
It is.
Navigating challenges and celebrating successes.
Yeah, and sometimes just talking to someone who understands what you're going through can make all the difference.
Yeah.
It can help you gain perspective, find solutions, and feel more connected and supported.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this section, right? We talked about reframing our narrative, cultivating self-compassion, setting those SMART goals, establishing routines, focusing on what we can control, and seeking support.
It's a lot.
That's a lot to digest.
Yeah. But I think the key takeaway is that we have a lot more agency than we often realize.
Right.
Even when we're feeling behind, we have the power to, choose our mindset, take action, and create some, positive change in our lives.
So empowering, right? It's about like taking back our power and taking ownership of our journeys.
Exactly.
Now I'm curious, how does the lecture wrap up?
Yeah.
What's the final message that it leaves us with?
Well, it actually concludes with a really beautiful and thought-provoking message of hope and encouragement.
Okay.
I think it's the perfect note to end on for this part of our deep dive.
I love a good cliffhanger.
Okay.
So before we go, I want to remind our listeners that we'll be right back after a short break.
Okay.
To dive into that final message from the lecture and share some closing thoughts. So stay tuned.
Okay. So we're back. And before the break, we were like totally hanging on, waiting for that final message from the lecture.
I know, right?
It feels like we've already uncovered so much.
Yeah.
Like we challenged this whole idea of being behind. We talked about embracing reinvention, and we explored all these practical ways to like shift our mindset and take action.
Right.
So what's the final thought? What does the lecture leave us with? Well, it's kind of cool because it doesn't end with like, a list of do this and you'll be successful.
Okay.
It's more like it ends with this really simple but powerful statement about where we are right now.
Okay.
Basically, it says, you are exactly where you need to be right now to start moving forward.
I'm getting chills. Like, that is such a powerful statement.
It is, right.
It just makes me feel this sense of, like, acceptance. Like, wherever I am right now, with all my, flaws and shortcomings and whatever, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is the perfect starting point. It's like permission to, let go of the past and embrace the present moment as, like, the launching pad for my future.
I love that. That's a really beautiful way to put it. And I think that's, that's at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Releasing that guilt and shame that, comes with feeling behind. So, like, instead of beating ourselves up for past mistakes or comparing ourselves to, where other people are at, it's about just acknowledging where we are and recognizing that we have everything we need right now to start moving forward.
It's like that saying, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Oh, I love that.
You can't change the past, but you can choose to take action right now from wherever you are.
Totally. And what makes that final message so powerful, I think, is that it kind of combines acceptance with empowerment.
Yeah.
It's not about settling or just resigning ourselves to, our current situation.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even if we feel behind, we still have the power to choose how we move forward.
It's a reminder that, like, our journey isn't over.
Not at all.
There's still so much we can do and learn and so much joy and fulfillment, to experience.
Exactly. And that's, I think, what this whole lecture is really all about. Reclaiming our power.
Yeah.
Embracing our potential.
Yeah.
And, living a life that's aligned with our values and our hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that it's never too late to start, never too late to change, and never too late to create that life that we really want.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a question.
Okay.
What's one small step inspired by this lecture that you can take today
Yeah, what's one little thing?
to start moving towards that life you envision for yourself?
It doesn't have to be a huge thing.
No, not at all.
It could be, setting a tiny goal.
Yeah.
Or creating a new habit, or even just changing, like, how you talk to yourselves, to be a little more encouraging and compassionate.
Right. Remember, progress starts with a single step. And like we learned today, you're not behind. You're right on time, and you have everything you need to create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.